Ladies and gentlemen of the YouTube universe, what is going on with you on this Monday evening? It is Monday, December 11th, 2023, roughly 6:30 p.m. California time. I am, of course, your always gracious host, Fallon, from GoNootropics.com, coming at you with the chamomile chairs. Good to see all of you rolling through for another video. Thank you for stopping by. Today we're talking about money, baby. Right? We're talking about money. If money is something you don't have, you want to get it. And if money is something you do have, you're scared of losing it. Right? When I've had money in the bank, and I've never really had a lot of money in the bank. I think I maxed out at like almost 10 grand in the bank at one point in time. This was during the Alice's restaurant heydays. If I didn't have a lot of money, I would just kind of spend it kind of loosely because it's like, well, it's all going away anyways, right? If you're sitting on $500 in your bank account, you're just more likely to spend it versus if you have a lot of money in your account, you're more fearful of losing it because it's like you finally got to a point where there's a little bit of change in the old piggy bank. And so you're just kind of like scrounging it, baby. You're scrounging it. Every little expenditure is met with anxiety and fear. Because think about how long it took you to get that amount of money in the bank, of course. You don't want to lose it. And for the past couple months, my job has kind of been on the rocks over here. My boss's business is, I hate to say it, but slowing down big time. I told Christine earlier that I might end up at Home Depot, baby. I might end up down at the Home Depot wearing one of those, orange overall covers, helping people find the right screw. And one of my boss's biggest vendors, one of our biggest vendors, we deal in specialty products. I should say he deals in specialty products because, it's not my business. I'm just the lowly cog. I'm just there to grease the wheels of the machine, right? I'm just the lowly cog. But he deals in specialty products. We sell to vendors. We also sell direct. And one of our major vendors, and keep in mind, this has been tanking, I want to say slowly for the past year or so, but more recently, in the past couple months, it's been tanking kind of at a steeper drop. And if you watch some of these economy guys on YouTube, there's a lot of, doom and gloom about the economy, how it's tanking and, and all the industries are tanking. And so it has finally, this economic downturn has finally affected my boss. And on a typical order from one of our large vendors, they will usually order in the realm of 150 of these kind of specialty products each month, right? And in the past few months, I've seen my boss get pissed when they just submit an order of 50 or 60 products, which 50 or 60 is a really low order for this particular vendor. Well, today they submitted their order and they only ordered 4, right? They only ordered 4. And this is causing a lot of anxiety for my boss. This is causing a lot of stress for him. And, stress for me too, because he's been calling me in less. He's been, there's not a lot to do anymore. Over at his place, there's not a lot of products to ship. There's not a lot of things to do. So for the past couple months, my usual routine is to call him in the morning to see what the day's workload is like. And it's just kind of been tanking, right? It's been tanking. There's less to do. And now I feel the fear in his voice. I can see the anxiety. I could see the pain. Because he's somebody where, money is kind of like the god. It's kind of like it's the god. Even though he has a lot of money saved. He's 76 years old. He's got well over $1 million in the bank. Certainly enough to carry him through to his final days. I guess if you have, let's say, $1 million in the bank, well, you could probably squeeze by for about 10 years, give yourself, $100K to live year to year. That money will be gone in 10 years. And I think he has more than enough to kind of squeak by if he really wanted to. But as he sees the business crumble, as he sees sales drop, as he sees the money's really not rolling in, there's this psychological fear. I can feel the fear off of him that he's really not doing too good mentally with these sales. And I understand that, but isn't it a psychological fear, right? Financial ruin. Money is kind of this psychological thing where, if you have it, you're just so scared that you're going to lose it. And maybe I just don't understand because I'm not in his position. It's easy to look at somebody with, let's say $2 million in the bank and say, well, what are they worried about? Here you are with $500 to your name. And, a lot of poor people have, well, I can't say a lot, but a lot of poor people don't have this same anxiety about money because they just kind of see that it comes and goes. It's kind of like if I think back to my poorest moments, which now is probably one of them, you always manage to squeak by one way or another, right? You always manage to squeak by. You always manage to survive. And so you kind of look at these people with, much more money, and you see how they respond. When they have all this money in the bank, they could get by. But this psychological fear when the cash cow stops bringing home the milk, it's this psychological fear. My boss is somebody who's built his life, kind of built his meaning around having all this money. So when it's not coming in, there's this fear. There's this anxiety. There's this uncertainty about the future, because it's like a psychological thing where, yeah, you might have a lot of money in the bank, but to psychologically know that there's no more coming in and you're just kind of working off your stash and you're slowly seeing that stash dwindle down to nothing, I think that poses a psychological fear for a lot of people. And he is somebody who's kind of made his life about money, made his life about having the nice things and driving the Bentley and, extravagant dinners. Even though he's really not an extravagant person, I think he just likes the idea that if he wanted to do these things, he could. And for a long time, he's been doing pretty good because the money has been rolling in, But I've noticed the past couple months, like I said, this one particular vendor, our biggest vendor, who usually places upwards of 150 orders of this particular specialty product, that has been slowly dwindling. That has been slowly on the decline. And this last order was for just 4. So I heard it in his voice on the phone today. He's not happy. He even told his gardener to stop working on the garden, right? He's really paring down and kind of battening down the hatches because he has this fear that it's all going to disappear. All the money is all gonna go away, right? So, you know, yeah, money is one of those things where if you don't have it, you want it. If you have it, you're always scared of losing it, right? I see him refreshing his his stats and his bank and his stocks, and every day it's kind of looking at the stocks and, oh, did the stock go down, did the stock go up? And your emotions are kind of tied to what the stock is doing, which is really you talk about quite literally a roller coaster. If your sense of peace and happiness comes from what the stocks are doing, what the Dow Jones are doing. It's like, talk about being a slave to, and being on like a roller coaster, a slave to the almighty dollar. And isn't this kind of where they want us? Isn't this where they want us to be? They want us a slave to the money, And it's hard to escape the reality that, well, you need money in this world. You need money to eat. You gotta work to put the roof over your head. You gotta work for food. And if you want nice things, you gotta work even harder. Look, we need the money. We need the sales, baby. We need these sales. We need the money. But isn't there a part of you that has to step away and see the bigger picture? He's not somebody who's family oriented. He doesn't have kids. He's not a particularly spirited person. He's not into Christmas. He's not into family gatherings, family get-togethers. He doesn't have that kind of piece of the puzzle figured out. And he's kind of put all of his chips into the cash cow. And if the one thing you're kind of placing your bets on stops producing, or all of a sudden the stock goes down, or this and that, well, there goes all your mental peace. There goes almost your sense of who you are. If you put all the eggs into the basket of making money, and I'm only happy if the cash cow is producing, well, what happens when the cash cow doesn't come home, right? Or the cash cow gets loose and lost, right? The cash cow gets sick, the cash cow dies. And then what does that do to somebody who all the eggs are kind of in that basket, right? So just kind of something to think about. It's interesting to watch how people deal with money, how people respond to, financial ruin. One of the good things about, being broke or being poor is you typically don't notice when the economy tanks, because it's like, well, we've always been broke. We've always been struggling. And so people like that are just more likely to kind of coast through, baby. Coast through these economic downturns versus somebody, millionaires. You see their mental health totally catch on fire when the economy takes a downturn, and they still got their money, but their investments aren't doing good. The stocks aren't doing good. Their business is taking a downturn, and it's one of those things where it just really shows you that money doesn't necessarily make you happier. I've always seen money as just kind of something that just reduces the real suffrage about living, because, yeah, if you're struggling to pay your rent and you're struggling to eat, like, yeah, that will do a number on you, man. If you're barely paying the rent and you're barely kind of getting by, that's a constant stress that money will solve, right? But once you have that kind of the basics covered, you got a little extra in the bank, anything after that is just kind of like you get less returns after you make a certain amount. And I think they've done studies on this where after you make like $70,000, I think that's the number. I could be wrong. But after you make a certain amount of money, your happiness doesn't increase. It kind of tapers off. And in fact, it really only sets you up for fear of losing the money, fear of the anxiety of what happens. Just imagine, somebody who's got $50 million. If their cash drops to like 20, that creates a similar fear response, to somebody who might not have as much, right? You make 10 grand, you lose a couple grand. Well, that's going to create like a fear response, And even though the person is still technically well off, it's just the psychological reality of that money dropping that a lot of people can't come to terms with, So in some ways, it's better to be, broke and just kind of scraping by, maybe with a little bit extra. And, maybe not making your money so fast. I think that is something that could ruin a lot of people, is if you just, let's say like you get a lot of inheritance. You don't really know what to do with the money. You don't know how to think about money. For a lot of people, money just means they get to like spend more, right? They just get to buy nice things. You hear these stories of all the time. People hitting the lotto, people getting a large inheritance and then kind of squandering the money, and they're kind of back to square one. So it's almost no matter what you do, not having money creates anxiety, but also having a lot of money and losing just a little bit of it also gives you pretty much the same level of anxiety, Then you got these people, which I never understood. You got these people like Warren Buffett, and he's kind of famous for being uber rich, right? Warren Buffett is obviously millions and millions and maybe billions. Warren Buffett, I don't know the exact number. I know dude is loaded, right? Dude is absolutely loaded. And you see somebody with like that level of money, and he lives in very modest house, dresses in very modest clothes. I think he's famous for eating a Big Mac every day or something like this. He doesn't have the vices. He doesn't have the nice things. It's almost like he just makes money for the sake of making it. And that never quite made sense to me either. You've made billions of dollars, but you're kind of living like a pauper, right? And it's like you're just making money for the sake of making it. Maybe he finds it enjoyable. I mean, to me, it sounds pretty boring. To me, it sounds like, if you had that money, maybe you wouldn't be so worried about spending a lot of it. But you do see a lot of these very wealthy people making a lot of money, but like not spending any of it. I don't know if it's a fear of spending money, right? That could be the case. It's you have all this money, but you're so fearful of spending it and wasting it, I think he's also notable for saying a cup of coffee should not cost more than 50 cents, which is probably true, right? Probably true. Anyways, people have different relationships with money. You should learn to, make it, but also manage those moments where you get the dip, right? Where you get the dip. You can't fault people for making it. But when you kind of see people lose all sense of reality when they lose their money, or the cash cow stops producing, it's kind of like that's a psychological thing everybody should learn to deal with, learn to make the money, but learn to also not fear those times where you're not making it as much, right? So we are in the downturn, baby. We are in the economic downturn. How are you guys doing? How is your money situation? Have you moved back in with the parents yet? Right? A lot of people have moved back in with the parents, which you got to do what you got to do, I guess. But as for me, you might see me down at the local Home Depot, right? And you could point and laugh and say, that is Fallon from GoNootropics.com coming at you with the Home Depot chairs, baby. And that is the video of the day. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. And I will see you very soon. Peace.